Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Bubble podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us today who represents a company which essentially is consolidating travel. They're one of the biggest travel infrastructure providers in the world. If you have traveled to any destination, you've gone to Malaysia or Thailand or anywhere for that matter, and you've used any sort of singular service, there is a chance that you've actually gone through one of their rails and they've rerouted you to whatever ticket, whatever hotel that you've booked. It's a fascinating industry that they work in. And the reason why it's most exciting is because a lot of times, a lot of these infrastructure API companies were very boring. They were very important because they powered a lot of our technology, but they were very boring because there wasn't a lot of direct interaction that we were doing as humans with them. Now, in the age of agents, in the age of AI, a lot of these infrastructure companies are now center stage. They're extremely important and they're scaling very fast. Recently, we saw the acquisition of Open Router with Stripe as well. Again, that confused a lot of people and it was fascinating because there was a company, I believe, with a revenue of 200, $300 million that was acquired for $7 billion by Stripe. You can actually see how Stripe looks at the long-term growth of that infrastructure play. And so I thought, it'd be great to have a conversation similar to that model, but for travel. Travel itself is a $2 trillion industry right now. I was actually looking at a report early in the morning, and in the next 10 years, it is expected to be over doubled. So we're looking at a $5 trillion industry by 2035. It is going to be huge again. If AI is making everything automated, what do humans end up doing? Probably traveling and experiencing the world. With us today is Salman Syed. He is the VP at Nuitée. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. But Salman, thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us.
Thank you, Muzamil. Good to be here.
I'm going to start off with just trying to get a sense of, what do you do at Nuitée and what led you to Nuitée? Tell me a bit about your life and a quick summary. Where are you from? What did you do? Where did you educate yourself? And what have you been up to before you ended up here?
Yeah, good question. I first of all at Nuitée, I was an advisor at Nuitée for a few years, and then I sort of liked it so much and was spending so much time that I've joined them full time last year. And I'm basically focused on anything that helps Nuitée grow. So that could be from hiring to setting up some of the systems and processes to some of our very strategic partnerships, the whole gambit. So I get to do a whole bunch of stuff. I have a strong connection to Pakistan, of course, and I studied in Canada, and then I am based out of the UK at the moment.
Very cool. Very cool. Tell me a bit about what Noita does, and what you said you were an advisor, but you liked it so much. So, what was it that you liked? What were you looking at?
Yeah.
As what Noita is doing.
Every industry has, when Nuitey started in 2016, every industry there was a go-to API, and our founder and CEO Med Ben Mansour realized that whose own background was in payments. Realized that travel doesn't really have a go-to API. So my background is in travel, but his background is was in payments, and he wanted to build that go-to API. And what attracted me to Nuitey 3 years ago was that the problem that Nuitey was trying to solve is either it works either you try to solve a big problem, and if you can solve a big problem in a big space, you've got double the win, and that's what Nuite was. So Nuite was trying to solve a big problem, and how to make selling travel super easy for anybody who wants to sell, and in a space that's not just a couple of million dollars in market potential, but worth, as you said earlier, $2 trillion. And if you can solve a big problem in a big marketplace, that's hugely exciting.
Now that makes sense. When it comes to selling travel,
Yes.
what exactly does that entail? Like, if you really sort of break it down to basic building blocks, I understand. airline tickets. I understand hotels. Again, you go to, and this is something that people have already experienced, right? So they go to Expedia and they go to Priceline and even Google Travel. And there are
Yes.
a few things that they automatically sell. They sell hotels, they sell airline tickets. They probably sell car rentals as well. So what all do you guys do? And then for an average user, isn't Priceline already doing that? Because they're this one aggregator marketplace that has all seemingly has all of these players. So
Yeah.
how are you different than what, let's say, Expedia or Priceline or Google Travel is doing?
Yeah. So without naming any particular company, um, I'll give you an example of a hackathon that we had with Google a few months ago in London. And we had about 40 different individuals, very smart developers, come together to build a new application for travel. So this was like one of the great applications that was built within hours, from start to finish. Was this guy runs marathons, and he always has a problem on trying to find a hotel that has all the facilities that he needs, like a gym and this and that, and proximity to the marathon where it starts from, etc. And he wanted to build a marathon app, which keeps track of all the marathons happening. It's not something that I would be running anytime soon, but and he was trying to connect to a travel provider that could help bring in the hotel and flights component. And he tried and he looked at the documentation and this and that. And his focus is not, wasn't to sell travel. His focus is to build a super fantastic app and make it super easy for people who are running marathon and kind of be a one-stop shop. So he wanted an easy, app, easy travel provider that built the whole infrastructure, including the search, book, integrated into his workflow, provided the payments, and provided the service, that end-to-end thing. And he wanted to do it in a couple of hours, not months and years. He didn't want to contact the big infrastructure providers. He didn't want to make get all the permissions and this and that. And that's the problems we look to solve. Make travel super easy for B2B providers. So we are not a B2C app. We're not a OTA, online travel agent. We are the infrastructure for other companies that want to sell travel. Like, it could be banks, it could be super apps, it could be loyalty programs, it could be anybody in the world who wants to sell travel. We enable
But
that.
that would that include experiences as well? And because the
Yes.
example that you've given is very, very, very fascinating. So I'll give you a counter example of something that I experienced recently. A lot of people right now are obviously, because my generation, where I'm a late millennial, and
Me
all of
too,
my
Muzamil.
friends were all right. So all of my friends were always discussing about how we all love traveling. We all love. I think the word that I'd use is experiencing the world, right? And
Yes.
now we have young kids, and we were thinking, okay, during the summer, for example, I'm in the US right now. I was actually thinking during the summer, can I actually go to Europe and potentially spend a month over there, but not like travel as it normally you imagine it, but rather, can I put my son into like a football camp? Can I actually continue to work during doing my day job while also just living in, let's say, Spain and sort of experiencing the local culture? Now that's a very different form of travel. It requires for whoever plans it to know if there is a football camp nearby and a house that fits my need, like an Airbnb of some or something of the sort. Do I have potentially daycare for my daughter who's 1 years old? These are Expedia cannot do that. Expedia
Yeah.
still requires me to do a lot of groundwork and
Yeah.
then figure out how to fill up those missing pieces.
Yeah.
So theoretically, I can make an app. And while I was discussing that, and that's a weird part of the world that we live in today, because I was discussing this with a friend, and then the next day I got an ad for a company that actually does exactly that. The ad said, looking to travel to Europe, we'll sort it out and we'll put your son into a football camp and we'll set you up a house and you can work during the day. And that's when I realized, okay, so now you can actually create companies that are focused on very, very unique, niche based
Yes.
experiences.
Yes.
And so my understanding is the person powering that, all of that would be you, and the curator of that experience is that company. Does that make sense?
Bingo. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So that's exactly right. And that's the beauty of what Nuitée does, right? So if you look at travel and how it was searched for years and years, is by a couple of fields, which are very plain vanilla. It doesn't capture
Mm,
even you know 10% of what you were looking for in your previous example, right? So the way travel was searched is these are my demographics, this is my price point, this is my place, right? Like four or five, like, yeah, you know, and this is where I'm coming from, this is where I'm going. um, and what and that's a very and that was fine 25 years ago. But for somebody now to, like, you know, we had we had another a great application customer that wanted to create this app for movie lovers, right? Where do you
mm,
how do you you know, how do you find hotels, you know, how do you find hotels where the best movies have been shot, where which have a red carpet, and that's the kind of personalization that is not possible unless you are unless you have the infrastructure, i.e., the open API architecture, you have the, you know, you're gathering data, and this is what AI enables, right? So the two
mm,
things that have always been true from time immemorial about travel are these two things. One is trust, because travel is one of those things which you can't just go to a showroom and sort of try before you
mm,
buy, right? So, like your previous example, you're pulling all of these things together and trying to go to a place where you've never been before. So, trust is extremely important. And time is scarce, right? So, time, you know, you have 2 weeks. If you get, it's not like you'll waste a, you know, an evening or an hour. You'll waste your whole 2 weeks if you get this wrong. So from a time perspective, it's like it's a huge cost. So trust is number one, and personalization is number two, right? These are the two things that, is it relevant to me? Okay, there's a great holiday in Barcelona in this beach, but I'm not a beach person, right?
mm.
And the fact is that you know, every one of us now, even you as a millennial, have a lot of personas. You have a persona with your family, you have a persona
Mm.
as a friend, you have a persona with your you know, with whoever you play sports with. Well, what's your favorite game that you play with, Samuel?
These days it's pickleball.
Oh, okay, pickleball. So you know, you have a persona as your, you know, as your, with your pickleball buddies. You'll have you know, you'll have all of these different personas. So any one year you'll make a travel decision based on any of those six or seven or eight or 10 personas. And for that personalization to happen, you need beyond those four or five fields. That's kind of the power, and this is where AI is changing the game. So what is not changing is is personalization and trust. Those are still going to be important, whether it's AI or non-AI, and that's been important 1,000 years ago. It'll probably be important for the next 1,000 years. But what is changing is the extent of how that manifests itself in your search, in your discovery, in your decision making.
No, that makes a lot of sense. If I were to break it down, I would actually break it down to, and you've actually broken it down perfectly in terms of trust and time. The way that I would sort of be curious about it though is, the problem of trust was solved by, let's say, Google with the sort of mass integration of reviews, right? So the only way you can actually trust something in today's day and age when you haven't seen it is you go and you read a ton of reviews, you cross check it with a bunch of different sources, and you try to get a probability of confidence of whether this will pan out the way that a lot of people are saying it will pan out, right? And then in terms of time, the way that I would actually look at it would be like a stock market of sorts, where demand and supply is basically bumping up and bumping down the different prices of different things. And previously, it was very unoptimized because things would just be driven by the user itself. So if everybody is free at a particular date, everybody would want to go in at that particular date. Today, now with super rapid data transfer, you can actually turn it around where I can get a notification and say, listen, October, nobody's coming in, it's super duper cheap, are you interested? Maybe you can move some things around and you can actually come in during that time, right? So the
Yep.
idea of the infrastructure then enabling efficiency by filling in all of those gaps that were previously complete, like, for a lot of travel, they usually have a set amount of months, 3 4 5 months, where they make all of the money for throughout the year, and the rest is just mostly sitting empty. And so I'm curious, when you talk about your API, is it just search and discovery, or does it send in, is it capturing or connecting data around reviews as well? Is it actually giving you real time price as well, where people can then, again, like a stock market, try to maximize that sale by ensuring, okay, $100 thing is available for $5 because this is just completely off season. If you can't afford
Yeah.
$100, go off season. Maybe the weather isn't that great, but it's just $5. Why not? And
Yeah.
so you actually fill in those gaps and make sure you maximize the business.
Yep. So you must have worked in travel in your previous life, in a different reincarnation. You were a frustrated travel agent, Muzamil. So yeah, no, that's exactly right. Right. So so it's trust, but with trust comes responsibility, right?
Hmm,
So and secondly is time is obviously a factor, but personalization is a lot bigger than just time, right?
hmm,
So and that's exactly those are exactly some of the things that we've solved for. For example, I could be searching for something, and is it a live search or not? For example, that's important. So you build trust not by just the reviews, which we do have. And in fact, we do a sentiment as well. So we don't just rely on one source of reviews. We combine reviews, so we kind of give a sentiment, because the other thing is information is not a problem, but the interpretation of it is a challenge. And so we try to make it as easy, because we've got data. On our
hmm,
platform, there's more than 2 billion searches that are done every day. And data is our friend. So we want more and more data, we want more and more searches, and that allows us to optimize. So to answer your question, we it's the infrastructure that allows us to build that, whether whether it's live, it's not live, whether how your results, because we've got about 3 million properties on our through Nuitée that are available. And we've got about 700 plus airlines that are available. So there's literally millions of permutations and combinations that could happen. And the search is optimized over, let's say, 200 plus sources of supply. Those sources of supply could be direct, i.e., the hotel chains, like a Hilton, for example, or they could be through other points of aggregation that we optimize, we clean up all this data, and we say, look, when Muzammil is searching for that, for the Hilton in Heathrow, we are looking at that same property from 15 different sources, and we're optimizing it for that particular date, because we know that maybe Hilton is the best source, direct source for those dates.
hmm,
A
hmm.
long answer to your question.
Yeah.
I hope it addresses
Tell,
it.
tell me about the sources of supply. So
Yes.
you're obviously sitting there at the center. you're not sitting out, you don't have like a team going to people and saying, listen, you're not on the system, why don't you come in, right? So for example, what, let's say Airbnb does, where the
We
average.
do. We do.
Okay.
So we've got a supply team. We've got a direct supply team located across, I think, 30 plus countries around the world, and including a big presence in the US and the major cities in Europe, where they're going doing exactly that. So if you look at the hotel supply, you've got the big global chains like the Hiltons, like the Best Westerns of the world. You've got the regional chains, which you've got the regional chains, and then you've got the independent hotels, right? Like which might have only one or two or three properties, and our direct contracting team goes and contracts with all of these three sources of supply. But it's not just the independent supply, it's also we also aggregate over over 200 other sources of supply. So by that, and keep me honest here because I tend to use some industry jargon and it gets confusing. So please keep me honest here. But in travel, you have like what they call destination management company, right? So I am a destination management company in Dubai, let's say, and in Dubai, I provide like transfer services. I provide this. And by the way, I also have 10 hotels that I've got really super sweet deals with.
Hmm.
So like out of our 200 plus sources of supply, some of them would be these big local destination management companies that get the best offers and the best deals because they've got the depth of relationship, at those properties. So we are trying to, and this is what the beauty of technology, and which because it allows us to optimize across the same property across like 10, 20, 30 different sources of supply.
That makes sense. But the reason why I asked this particular question was, for example, look, the way that people tend to interact with technology, innovation, and particularly AI is that they're interacting with it through fear. They're thinking,
Mm,
okay, this technology is going to come in, it is going to disrupt all of us.
mm,
When in actuality, any technology that comes in tends to definitely change things, and
yep.
it's the smartest ones will understand that change and pivot accordingly, right? So my curiosity would be, do you then tend essentially disrupt the travel agent, or is there a way to potentially partner with them? For example, um, if let's talk about Pakistan, which is a very non-digitized economy. The reason why I take Pakistan out is because it's still, a lot of other countries in the world are, their data is somewhere in some resource, and probably you're partnered with that resource and you're able to capture that data like a supplier of suppliers, right? But for Pakistan, you still need to onboard a lot of people and put them up on the map. Is there a proposition for someone to be the middleman and say, okay, I will go and aggregate all of those folks and I will use your infrastructure to bring them all together, and I will set up like a supplier of suppliers to deal with you while managing all of these people, rather than you having to individually go to these very, very super, super small suppliers, right? So you go and talk to one person and they bring in like 500 folks that are in northern Pakistan, across these extremely tough to find places in Skardu and so on.
Yeah.
Is that a proposition that you're seeing in terms of enabling smaller businesses to participate in this?
Yeah, actually, that's a great example, right? So again, we don't have a B2C site, right? So we never want to compete with our customers. So
Hmm.
unlike an OTA, like an online travel agent, we don't have a nuitée.com where you can go book hotels or book flights, etc. And the simple reason for that is because we want to provide the same service, infrastructure, content to our customers, and then go and connect in a meaningful way to the end users. And and this is what you've highlighted here, Muzamil, is a big trend. So if I can single down on one key strategic trend in travel, is that over the next 5 years, and that shift has already started, that the way travel has been bought for the last 25 years, which has been frankly fairly static, and all our assumptions on the sites that we go to, etc., that is in the process of shifting. So there's
Hmm.
two, so and and where it's shifting to is to be closer to the end user, simply,
Hmm.
right? So let's say I use Grab. I'm in Singapore and I use Grab for my grocery delivery. I use Grab for my, my taxi services, transport, etc. And I use Grab for some other services. Why can't Grab also? Why can't I, as a user, why can't I buy my travel from Grab also? Right? So that's exactly what I'm enabling. So let's say, to my previous example, if I'm a marathon runner, I go to I go to this marathon app and check, hey, what's the new marathons coming in? Has the registration open? That's my go-to for when I want to run marathon. And why not, when I'm kind of checking that, I can book my hotel at the same time. Can you imagine how fragmented that experience is right now, where I book my marathon somewhere, I go and check where the hotels are, I go look at flights somewhere else, and I kind of then go. And this is exactly what we are empowering, is like a better, more personalized experience. And technology is enabling it. It's not replacing it. Now, let's say I'm a marathon runner and I go run marathons globally. I'm not going to go to my travel agent for that booking. I might go to my travel agent for some other booking, but I'm not going to go to my travel agent for that booking. And we are powering both. We're powering both, and we're powering the shift to being closer to the point of sale.
Hmm. Essentially, what we're looking at now is an AI first travel experience, right? So,
Yes.
the idea you're saying the front end of how you book travel, which was these are you go. This is just like the most generic. There was always a calendar, start date, end date. There was a location tracker, and then it would ask you the number of people traveling, and that was the only input it would take, and then it would define something around that. I spoke to a couple of travel folks recently, and one of them actually got acquired by Expedia. I feel like the first podcast that we did on this show, and so they were all about we are creating a reimagining travel and in the way that and they were like the B2C side of things, right? So they were saying,
Yes.
okay, it's the way that you interact with your travel exploration or
Absolutely.
management is going to change where it's much more visual. There's a lot of content now that you actually go and experience first before you decide on where you want to travel. It
Yes.
is optimized to a lot of these different requirements. So it's a conversation that you have. It's a consultant that sits down, has a conversation with you, probably pulls in previous data that's already exists for you, and then it creates an experience. So it's an experience
Yes.
designer.
Yep.
But more importantly, historically, what has happened is you would book in your travel again. Like I'll go back to the stock market. It was a financial, an economic decision where you would the speed to booking allowed for or the earlier you were in allowed for the cheaper you got your package for. The downside of that was things do tend to change. Environments
Yep.
change, situations change, and so you would book like a vacation 6 months on, and then circumstances have changed, and now you're stuck. And then if you have to change a thing or two, unless you have a travel agent that you get on call and they move things around for you, people who are on booking.coms and on pricelines, they would get stuck because they didn't have they were hard locked on tickets on XYZ. Now what they're saying is, okay, we'll basically give the travel agent to the masses. It's constantly with you. It can redesign your travel on the go. um and that for me is a logistical nightmare. Like,
Yep.
it's one thing to
Yeah.
say, okay, 6 months from now, this is the hotel booking, this is that. But what if I'm in Turkey right now, and then I decide, okay, I can't deal with this hotel, find me something quick right now within the next 2 hours that I have to do.
Yep. Yep.
That's something very different. How do you enable that as well? Like, is it real time? Is it
Abs-
constantly tracking every updated inventory that's available, so on and so forth?
Yes. So, the first thing is obviously having the breadth, and then the second thing is having the depth. And by depth, I mean, being AI ready, right? So you'll have your AI agent. Your AI agent knows everything about Muzamil. He or she knows, when you want to go on holiday. He knows when your family is going to go on holiday. It knows, has all of that. It knows you inside out. You might have your AI agent actually create that itinerary for you. It might then say, look, I want to go and speak to the agent of X travel search company. And the AI to AI conversation takes place. But that conversation can only take place if the infrastructure is there for it to be able to offer that breadth, right? So, for example, we have 5 million images of different properties that we have AI enabled, where AI can actually search, and those images are searchable on AI. We have got all the data in terms of attributes, right? So, for example, if you want to go to look at hotels where James Bond movies have been shot, and that information, your travel agent will never have that information, right? So your travel agent might use us in the background. Your AI agent might be going to, whatever the travel provider AI is, and they're more likely than not to be relying on somebody like us to be able to give them the search that you're looking for. And that AI to AI conversation is technology, right? For that to take place, that infrastructure, the guardrails, and the content, and the normalization, and the search, and the supplier network, that needs to be live to be able to have that conversation. That's what we're providing. And
Makes sense.
you might come up with an idea that, look, I want to be able to go, I want to create some new business for reunions, for school reunions, right? How do
Hmm.
you enable that, right? How do you enable that?
Hmm.
You'll have X number of functionality, and then you'll want a travel provider. That travel provider with that whole infra, you don't want to be dealing with customer service on that, and you don't want to be dealing with payment gateways. You don't want to be dealing with all of those things. You'd want to just go to one source that comes with all of that infrastructure and brings it to the fore. And that could be
Makes
AI to AI. That could be Chat GPT to an agent. It could be your AI agent talking to a more traditional source. It could be any one of those scenarios.
makes sense. Have you seen a difference in terms of right now, if you have two billion queries a day or a month?
A day, a day, a day.
That's
Yeah.
insane. Have you seen a shift in that from human queries versus, let's say, agentic queries? Case in point being that recently we found out that 60% of the internet traffic now is bots and agents. And the expectation of a lot of analysts is that we're going to be looking at 99.9% of that traffic to be agents by 2030. That is just the speed of growth of autonomous search and agentic, internet usage. And so I'm curious whether you have the
Yes.
capability and are tracking, data on your own website in terms of the difference there, and what do you project in the future of how your infrastructure usage is going to change vis-a-vis humans versus agents?
Yeah, very interesting question. Very interesting question. So the answer, so I don't know the exact percentage,
Mm.
but we in the last 6 months have signed up a lot of AI customers. So AI travel curators, AI new age AI travel agencies like Odysseus and others. And so the traffic is absolutely changing. And I think it'll only increase. Where it'll eventually settle, in which, like as it progresses, anyone's guess. But the trend is like this, is like this. And I think as our own AI agents that we use have more access to our complete self, right, and to our usage of all our applications, etc., they are going to become more trusted sources of search.
What's the for an average user, like you said, I could come up with a reunion app and connect with you. How difficult is it to connect with you right now? And is it plug and play for anyone to just hop on, get the API access, and start playing with it? Give it to Claude, and they'll sort of set you up with documentation, or is it still gate kept for a certain scale of people who can come in?
Great question. And it is super easy. So you could set up your API access. You don't need to even talk to anybody. And
Mm.
we have had enterprise customers, huge fintechs with their own sort of regulations and compliance stuff, go from start to finish in 2 weeks. We've had customers like some of the examples I shared with you that have developed end-to-end applications in 2 hours. And the feedback that we at least get is that our documentation and sign up process and validation and all of that is the easiest that they have seen, in the travel space.
Mm. What's the biggest challenge, do you think, in travel right now? Like what keeps you guys up at night?
Yeah, so I can tell you what keeps us up at Nuitée is basically growth, right? So we are obsessed with
Mm.
growth. And we want to be part of that growth. So we're not kept up by any one particular issue, but we're just and for us it's Mozambique is also relatively easy, right? Because we're not a legacy company. So for legacy
Mm.
companies, it's very hard because they can't cannibalize their revenue. They've got an existing revenue base. For us, it's all new. We're enabling, it's all net new revenue. So for us, we don't lose sleep because it's net new revenue. For legacy companies, it's a very turbulent time because they're cannibalizing on their existing revenue because you know. Um, I think I think for us it's more speed, right? So one of our values is sense of urgency. And
Mm.
I think what are if you ask uh 10 people in Nuite, it would probably be like I want to be able to have 30 hours in a day rather than like 24. That's probably our biggest challenge.
Mm. One of the things that I'm seeing now, courtesy of AI, and now I'm not talking about agentic AI, but rather AI enabling builders to build things super fast, is
Yes.
that every company is a big bunch of everything, right? So you got DoorDash coming up with agentic OS. You have like completely random companies come up with completely random stuff, and you're confused as to what does a particular company does. I think Spotify recently came up with a bunch of tools as well for developers, just because they built some stuff in house. And so I'm curious, how do you sort of create that discipline where you say, okay, this is the space that we're operating in. Let's not vertically integrate upwards or downwards. Let's not create a chatbot as a front. And instead of cannibalizing on the market share of our partners, or rather capturing that market share and pissing them off, let's just stay in our lane. Because I feel like right now every founder is going through that, where they're saying, okay, but we want growth. Why not build that space where, why not go B2C as well? What's stopping you? Because right now, maybe previously what was stopping you was, where do we deploy our capital? Today, maybe the cost of actually going there is so, it's so deflated that it might make you want to try that out. So, do you keep that discipline? Are you also exploring whether you want to vertically integrate up or down, or horizontally integrate into, let's say, parallel industries? Because, just because you can, a lot of people
Yeah.
are beginning to sort of expand out.
A great question. So I think that we've we're in a good space in a way that we're playing in an industry that's $2 trillion, right? So we've still got a lot of space to focus on, and I think the to solving for complexity in travel is still a huge problem because the legacy providers aren't really addressing it fast enough or well enough, to be honest. So I think it's for us, it's relatively straightforward to stay focused on this space. We're also driven a lot by our customers. And so, for example, that's why we would not move into a B2C space because there's we're not solving the right customer problems, right? Our customers are the B2B providers. We're going to solve their problems. So I think a lot of it comes down to what problems are you looking to solve and for whom, and we are very clear on that premise. Now, where the expansion does happen, I think as part of a scale up, that's the fun part, to be honest. And you don't want to kind of become very boring and corporate and say, look, thou shalt only do these five things and nothing else. So I think our engineering team is notorious for saying, hey, on the weekend, we developed X, and hey, this would be great to solve Y. And and I think we are good with that. Now, some things commercialize, some things don't, some things scale, some things don't. And I think this is just the part of this is the fun part of being a growth scale up, right?
Makes sense. Um, Salman, I'm going to sort of wrap this up at the 43-minute mark, but I have a couple of questions to end this. First of all, you said you have a background in travel. Um, what if I think the way that I would ask this is, what are the three most exciting startups or players or folks who are doing innovation in the travel space right now that you find interesting and exciting? And then a wider conversation beyond travel on other startups, potentially in other industries that you find interesting. Three travel and three non-travel.
That's a tough question. Zamal, that's a tough question. Um, I think in travel, of course, one is Nuitée.
Hmm.
Um, I think some of our customers, um, I find I find very interesting in terms of what they are trying to solve. So, for example, in corporate travel, there's a company called Tripism that solve a huge problem of sort of dynamic offers and communicating those offers to employees in the company. Um, uh, I think in non-travel, there's just too many too many companies that are interesting. Um, but I think in travel also, what is interesting is some of and these are some of our current customers are AI companies that are really bringing a whole new discovery and search approach to how do you curate your travel. So to your example earlier, how do you curate your travel? And companies like Odysseus, for example, is really interesting. And I think this is space where I think this is the great thing about being in today's day and age is that the companies, in fact, even for us, even though we've really been around for less than 10 years, we could get disrupted by somebody coming in fairly, left field. And I think that's just the exciting part of the, time and age we live in at the moment.
And then last question: how do you see
Yes.
on a non-technical, non-commercial side as a user who understands the industry? What does travel look like in 2035?
Good question. So I think this shift that's happening in how travel is bought will be fully realized. I will trust somebody else, which will not be a travel company, to put my travel together. And I think it's going to be determined by my the experience that I am trying to seek. Whether that experience is my hobby, whether it's my passion, whether it's my discovery. So it's going to be a lot more other categories of travel, not just leisure, like experiential travel, right? Like I want to go and learn how to cook different types of food, and I want to go do that in three different countries. That experiential travel is going to be a lot more prominent. It's going to be a lot more personalized and relevant to me and my persona, and I will have the ability to have tens of different personas, right? I might be that weekend Harley Davidson rider. I might be that corporate, guy going to work on the day, etc. And I think for travel, it's going to be hugely exciting. And I think the vision of having connected travel, right? Like I decide what to do, and then all the different components of my travel can be organized seamlessly, is going to come to fruition. So those are some of the things that I think is going to happen. And the
Makes
market
total
and
sense.
and the industry is going to be a lot bigger than it is right now.
Makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things that I would love to see happen by that time would be opening up a lot of new destinations. I'd love to see Africa sort of getting connected, and Asia, for example, they're getting connected from where both of us are, Pakistan. I think there's an incredible potential there. It's just that we haven't digitized that layer yet for people to be able to fully discover it. So I think by that time, hopefully, the world will have a lot more a lot of diversity of opportunities or things to travel as well. Salman, thank you so much for coming in and sharing all that insight. It's incredible what you guys are doing. Very, very exciting. And I'm excited to see where you guys go next.
Thank you so much, Mazamu.
And for all of you guys, let me know in the comment section below. How do you guys travel generally? What's your go-to? Are you using Booking.coms or Google Travels or some of these? I won't say new, but some of these legacy tech players. Are you using complete legacy travel agents still on the call? Booking your trips, or have you started to use some of these newer players that have come in? Where an agent sort of curates your entire experience. We'd love to know in the comment section below. But nonetheless, this was Syed Muzamil Hasan Zaidi. You are watching Beyond the Bubble podcast, courtesy of Noodle Seed Studios. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.